The following podcast is sponsored by Structure Tech.
If you have a hacksaw and you're bringing it to an inspection, whatever you think you're going to do, you shouldn't be doing it. And that's what another wise home inspector told me about a hammer.
That's
like,
true.
You're bringing a hammer to a home inspection, you probably shouldn't do whatever you think you're going to do with it. It's good advice.
Yes.
Welcome everybody to Structure Talk, a Structure Tech presentation. My name is Bill Ulrich, alongside Tessa Murray and Reuben Saltzman, as always. And on today's episode, we have a special on Zoom guest, Milind Angolkar, one of our fabulous home inspectors on the Structure Tech team. In fact, Milind is the most senior Structure Tech home inspector and also in charge of everybody who's an inspector on our team. So we invited him in today to have a little conversation and let everybody get to know Milind. So Milind, please unmute and tell us all about yourself.
Thanks, Bill. Is it inappropriate to say happy anniversary to Reuben today?
Oh, you're so sweet.
The easiest anniversary to remember of all time, 5/5/5.
Yeah, we will release this in 6 days from now. So we're pre-recording, but yeah, we are recording on my anniversary, Cinco de Mayo, 5505.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. You know why we got married on that day? So we could remember.
I'd expect nothing less.
We're big on numbers. Also, it was a Thursday. We got married on a Thursday, and we ended up saving a boatload of money on the location because nobody gets married on a Thursday.
Nope.
And we just said, whoever wants to be there, I mean, if they want to come to the wedding, they will be there. If they don't want to, they don't need to come. And everybody showed up. So I recommend getting married on a Thursday.
Been very Reuben invitation. It's like one of the most Reuben things of all time. At the very bottom of the invitation was in binary.
Yes. I had binary code on our invitation simply because like 555 is 01010101. That's what it makes if you do it in binary. We just put it at the bottom and nobody really knew what it was except for the people like Milind who know binary code.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good times.
Wow, that went off the rails quickly, but later on, let's get back to the wedding stories because I'll tell you all about my wedding.
I've known Reuben for almost 20 years. We worked together at Home Depot, but prior to us working together, I screwed up at a lot of things that when you add up the sum of these screw-ups, they actually ended up being a good background for being a home inspector. I went to college to be a doctor. I failed out of pre-med, and then I went to engineering. That didn't go well, and then accounting didn't go well. And then I needed a job, so I started working at Sherwin-Williams as an hourly associate, and I worked my way up from there in Illinois. I grew up in Illinois, in Chicago, and then moved up to the Twin Cities where they were opening Sherwin-Williams stores left and right in the early 90s. So I ended up taking over a store in Eden Prairie. It's surprising how these little pieces come together. Like a lot of paint failure issues are related to moisture. And there's some old ads saying that you shouldn't paint your homes or insulate your homes because it'll make your paint fail back in the turn of the century days. So then I went back to school because I thought this .com thing might work out really well. That ended up not going well either.
So you don't speak binary? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that early 80s coding didn't apply very well to that either. So it's kind of these things that didn't go well. While I was working at Home Depot, I also worked at a construction company called ICF Thermal Wall Structures, where we built and designed super insulated homes with insulated concrete forms. So it was kind of going to be the super efficient house of the future, which they've been around for a while, but they've made a good run at it. Late 90s, early 2000s. From there, I went into sales, remodeling sales, and that went pretty well up until the recession of 08, 09. And Reuben had always kind of had a standing offer. He said, I think you'd be a good fit for what we do. And I was like, it seems pretty fun, but I'm having a pretty good time doing this. And then it suddenly became very, very appealing when I was driving around the country trying to make ends meet. So that's the long story. But yeah, it was lightning in a bottle. I mean, I believe I was employee number 1. So it was Dwayne, Neil, Reuben, and I. And I got hired as kind of utility manager, a little bit of everything. Radon testing, obviously before it was licensed, a little collections, showed up at a couple of people's doors that hadn't paid their bills.
With a bat, or what sort of heavy device did you employ for this?
People paid. That's
It's Minnesota. People paid.
Yeah. If you called Structure Tech, you were disappointed to get me because Reuben had done all the scheduling prior to that. It was an awkward transition, but it went pretty well. So I took over the scheduling. It was a binder that we made every month, and one column was Reuben, one column was Neil, one column was Dwayne, and we'd manually type in the addresses and lockbox codes, and just a far cry from what we're doing today.
Oh my goodness. I remember those days, man. I would carry that binder around with me during inspections.
Yeah.
If my clients weren't there, I would answer the phone. I'd carry the thing on the roof. I mean, like, that's how we scheduled everything. That was so wild.
You rattle off the voicemail that you leave every day?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'd say, hey, thanks for calling Structure Tech Home Inspections. I'll be doing home inspections between 8 and noon and 1 to 4, but I will be returning calls before and after those times. Well, I'd tell people exactly when we would call them back to get people to leave messages. Yeah. Good times.
Good times. Good times. So.
And that was 2009?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it was.
I started December 2009. So that was, pretty much 10-ish, 11-ish until Lisa came over and saved us from ourselves.
Exactly.
In 2012-ish, I believe. Things became a lot more streamlined then.
Reuben, you just mentioned something that I didn't know, and you said before we had clients at the inspections. Tell me about the history of this.
This was just if I was doing an inspection and the client hadn't shown up to the inspection yet. And we do it that way. But the way we've always done it is we've always encouraged our clients to attend the whole inspection. That's the way we have always done it. Although that may be changing. I mean, we talked about that on a podcast a couple podcasts ago. And that's been the subject of discussion internally. My goodness, we have spent tens of hours talking about this, and it's probably going to change, but that's just a teaser. I don't know.
Teaser.
That's just a teaser. Yeah.
Hopefully will not reduce quality at all.
I think it's going to increase quality, really.
That's
Agreed.
true.
I think it's going to help people focus on one thing. We were just discussing that on an email thread today about just the whole myth of multitasking. I mean, you talk to so many people and they say they're good at multitasking. It's like, well, you're good at switching your attention from one thing to another very quickly and going back and forth, but nobody can truly multitask. The human brain cannot do two things at once. You can switch your attention back and forth very quickly, but that's it.
One of the things I forgot to mention was that I spent about 4 years working for Pella Windows and Doors locally out of Plymouth in their service department, and as well as at Home Depot. The last job I had was installation expediter, which is a fancy word for somebody that coordinates every phase of an installation, whatever it may be, from doors, windows, generators. It was Y2K. We'd had quite a few generators being installed. So working with clients, vendors, contractors, suppliers, just kind of trying to keep everybody on task with that type of stuff. But Pella was by far the best experience for what we do today, because almost everything that was a problem with the window was related to condensation and water leakage, and just about everything was related to installation error. I mean, just about every time we'd go out on site to see what was going on, we'd have our 3-page instruction manual and say, well, we see this item number here. Page 2, I mean, it wasn't very long, but the flashing details were wrong. I mean, there was a lot of stucco issues at the time, and the stucco was always tight to the windows. There was no weep screed around the bottoms and the sides, and
Whoa. We're talking insider language now. Everybody dial up your old weep screed knowledge.
It was basically, there was no way for water to drain properly around these windows from the interior or the exterior. Every window company has some issues with a certain segment of windows they've made. I've found doing what we do now. But basically, every manufacturer has some good and some bad windows.
Sure. That
was a great primer for what we do. I'm one of the fortunate people as far as training. I had Neil and Reuben and Dwayne to myself. Really, I just bugged them for hours on end and endless questions about things I didn't even know I didn't know. I mean, I thought I came in thinking, I've done some contracting work and I've got this condensation thing down. And then, one of the first houses I see in St. Paul has this giant hole in the basement that's 5 feet wide, covered with a metal cover. And I mean, it's the biggest cistern I've ever seen. This was a a doomsday prepper's dream in terms of how many thousands of gallons this thing would have held.
And Milind, I just got to say that word again. You said cistern. It almost sounded like it cut out for a second. I know what you're talking about, just for
Sure.
any listeners who didn't catch that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
And what's a cistern? As long as you bring it up.
cistern, it's an old way of collecting rainwater in a big hole in the basement. So you could use that for bathing, washing, drinking, maybe. But yeah, it'd be pre-plumbing. That's how you got your water.
See how ahead of the times we were in St. Paul? Good old St. Paul.
That's the only one we've ever found in St. Paul, Bill. All the rest are in Minneapolis.
Or Maple Grove.
Maple Grove. Yeah, we're too new up here in Maple Grove to have those.
Yeah, there's so much you have no idea that, until you start going around with an experienced inspector and, they ask you what you see in the room and you look around and you're like, well, you're just speechless. Like, it looks okay. And then they start rattling off item after item after item. It's very humbling, very humbling. So I was very fortunate in terms of training. I think it was pretty different than just about everybody else that came along in terms of training. I got, beginning with all the blogs, I read them as they came out instead of the new inspectors that have to read about how many, 500 of them?
Several hundred, yes.
Yeah, and so it's just, I've been very fortunate, but all those little things that I did in my past have added up to a pretty good background for what we do now.
Well, you know what, real quick, I just wanted to ask Tessa, did you ever have something like that happen with you, Tessa, where you're going along in training and it's like, what do you see? And you're going, oh, it looks good. And then all of a sudden you just get burned and you're like, oh boy, I'm not ready. I mean, I remember that happening to me for certain.
Oh yeah. It happened almost every inspection, right? Because you're always learning something new. I remember specifically I was on an inspection with your dad, with Neil, and we were like in the basement and I was feeling pretty good about myself because I was like, identifying things in the electrical panel and, testing the furnace and all that. And then we're getting ready to leave and he looks up and he's like, oh, we've got some pretty bad cracks in these joists. And then he identified all these major structural issues. I didn't see it all. It's like, oh, like you said, Milind, it's just a good reminder to stay humble. Mm-hmm.
Little things. I think flashlights. I had some little Rayovac thing for a while and poke my head up into the attic and look around. I'm like, yeah, it looks good. And then Reuben would bring out this blowtorch and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't see it. This is ridiculous. I need to get one of these. So now I'm completely obsessed with having the next brightest flashlight out there.
Yes, it makes a big difference though, doesn't it?
You can never have enough lumens.
Yeah, no doubt.
What I wanted to ask is, everybody knows my love of the story-and-a-half house, the wonderful workhorse of the city. What houses do you have a particular affinity for?
Oh, mine, 60s ranches. Yes.
Yes. I like those too, Milind.
Ranch houses is for somebody that likes to capable of doing things themselves. It's usually the mechanicals are accessible from below, box-shaped hole in the ground followed by a box-shaped box and then a triangle on top of it. So good water management. It's by far the best house in the Twin Cities.
We will agree to disagree.
Yeah.
I mean, in the water intrusion class that Tessa and I teach, it's basically your house that we start off with saying, this house is never going to experience water intrusion problems.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you said. It's a box with a little triangle on top with nice big overhangs on the edges, and the walls stay dry and the basement stays dry. For the most part.
For the most part, yeah. But, there's other things. It's pre-aluminum wiring. It's post mostly asbestos stuff. It's, lead paint, I guess, would be the lone, environmental thing that may be left over from that. But
how's the plumbing?
Got copper drains,
Nice.
Copper water pipes. Stuff's been updated now to plastic ABS and plastic drains. But yeah, it's a weird little, if you go down there and you see a copper drain stack, it's like, how would no one could afford to do this today?
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking about having you on the podcast because last week we were talking about leaky vacuum breakers. and we were talking about what happens if you try to remove this vacuum breaker. And a vacuum breaker, it's this little brass device that threads on the end of a faucet. It's required by code.
Not really necessary to go into this.
Well, but it's a delightful story.
Okay.
At least for us, not for you.
I haven't heard this story before. I'm excited to hear it.
Oh, you're in for a treat, Tessa. But these things are required by code. And, if you're in a city like, say, Minneapolis or Bloomington, and you're getting a city inspection done, and you don't have one of these vacuum breakers, you got to put one on. It's required by the city. And when we're doing these city inspections, and if it's like the only thing that's wrong, it's tough to ding somebody and say, look, you got to put this on and then hire us to come back out for, $75, $100 to come back out and sign off on it. So we always try to help people. But you know what? I think I'm stepping on Milind's story.
I will. I've been voluntold to tell the story here. The new inspector, I'm helping Neil out at a Bloomington time of sale evaluation. And that was the only thing that was left. 2 vacuum breakers, one for the front outside and one for the laundry sink were needed. And this person they asked very nicely, said, I don't feel comfortable putting these on. Would you mind doing it? And I said, sure, I can put this on. And I put on the exterior one, turned it on, no problem. Went downstairs to the laundry sink. They had a pet wash station hooked up to the laundry sink. So I disconnected that and put the vacuum breaker on, and then reconnected the pet wash station and turned it on, and it started spraying all over the place. But just to make sure I was doing it correct, I broke off the set screw. So the one thing this person loves more than anything, they can't use their dog wash. So Neil, God bless him, has a drill bit set in his truck. I said, Neil, can I borrow your drill? Or do you have a drill bit set? Maybe I can drill out this set screw and get this off of here. And he's like, yes. He loans it to me, and he has to leave. So I'm like, I can handle this. I won't screw this up anymore. So I tried drilling out the set screw, and the drill keeps slipping off. And I drilled 2 holes in my hand. And now I'm bleeding. And,
no.
and the set screw is, it's doing its functioning as intended. But there's, I'm drilling it, slips off, drilling a little hole in my hand. And there's just no way to get this thing off. Oh, in the process of drilling this, I accidentally knocked the dog wash off of the edge of the laundry sink, and that breaks in half. So then
when it rains, it pours.
Yeah.
Yes.
I break the drill bit. I've got 2 holes in my hand. I broke the dog wash. I leave to go to PetSmart and buy this little plastic sprayer. This thing is like $60. and I'm like, okay. Times are tight coming out of that last recession. It's like, all right, let's get this over with. And so you get this pet sprayer. I go back to my house in Roseville at the time, go from Bloomington PetSmart to Roseville, get my drill bit set. And at the time, I should have just went and bought another set of drill bits. But hindsight, 2020, it didn't work. So I continue to try and drill this thing out and break another drill bit and drill another hole in my hand. I think there's a image floating around on Facebook or something of my thumb back. This was a BlackBerry, so it tells you how long ago it was. But eventually I get it off, and that was the last time I installed a backflow preventer for somebody until today, ironically.
Get out of here.
I think I can handle this now. So
it's been a little over a decade.
I think I'll try it out, and it didn't leak. So
And you're not bleeding?
Not bleeding.
Did you require stitches?
No.
Milind, that is just such a good story.
Oh, it's so traumatic. But thanks for sharing that, because we all have our own stories as home inspectors, embarrassing stories. So that's terrible.
Yeah. And it just underscores like the things that can go wrong during an inspection. You think it's the most innocuous little thing. Like, yeah, I can just thread this on for somebody.
And then Reuben's blog comes out, I think not too long after that, on how to properly remove one of these.
Well, and that was something that I have learned post your experience.
Sure.
That was after this.
It's brass for people that are listening. And I should have just cut it, but that would have been the end of it. But
you would have had as many cuts in your hand by trying to do what Reuben was suggesting.
Hey, you just get a hacksaw, right, Reuben? Just get a hacksaw.
That's it. Yeah. Tessa made me feel like, I'm using some foreign term. I said, just grab your hacksaw. And Tessa's like, who owns a hacksaw?
Who's going to go after their faucet with a hacksaw?
Who has a hacksaw in their tool bag for inspecting?
Well, yeah, I'd say if you have a hacksaw and you're bringing it to an inspection, whatever you think you're going to do, you shouldn't be doing it. And that's what another wise home inspector told me about a hammer.
That's
Like,
true.
if you're bringing a hammer to a home inspection, you probably shouldn't do whatever you think you're going to do with it. It's good advice.
Yes.
So why do you carry a hammer, Reuben?
I leave it in my truck. I don't really use it for home inspections, but every once in a while, if I'm really curious and I want to pull out one of those joist hanger nails, Tessa and I did a video on this. If you want to make sure that somebody has the right nails in a joist hanger, I used to kind of pop them out. I might use a crowbar and a hammer, but now it's like I just use my tiny little, I'm holding my hands up to illustrate size. This is good pod. I use my tiny little crowbar that's about 6 inches. It fits in my tool pouch, and I'll use that to try to pop out a nail to make sure they use the right nails on a joist hanger. If it's the right nail, I ain't getting it out and I'm done. If it's the wrong nail, it'll pop out like nothing. So
Very interesting.
yeah, I haven't used a hammer during a home inspection in probably a good decade. It's been a long time.
I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Why is it called a crowbar?
It sounds like you have the answer.
I don't. I just have started asking questions about these unusual names. We'll fill in that blank later.
Crickets.
Not good pod. You know what? There's some more good stories that you should share with us, Milind. But which one do you want to share? Because there's so many. I'm sure that you have.
I've got this running list of like goofy things people have said during inspections to me.
Oh my gosh. The title of this podcast just flashed in front of me. I can't wait, Milind.
This one person at an inspection, it's, pre-COVID, obviously. Go up to the shower, and we're looking at the shower, and the plumbing code had recently changed where there was a requirement to, if you've got a glass shower door, it has to swing both ways, in and out. And then the client just immediately looks at me and goes, "Hey, it swings both ways." I talk about ice dams all the time. I think when I started, 2010 was one of the prime, like crazy ice dam years. The Metrodome collapsed that year. And I think that was the first year we had the thermal imaging camera, Reuben. Remember, we're just driving around.
We shared it. It was always, do you have it? Do you have it? We were shuttling that thing back and forth between the two of us.
We were driving around doing these ice dam inspections, and the story was almost always the same. Your air leaks, bypasses, air sealing, 1.5 story homes. Just generally, that type of thing. So I talk about homes that don't have that issue, that have an energy heal in their roof structure. I'm like, so I was explaining to people, so they literally raise the roof, and I'm doing my hands up and down. And, people were just like, they started breaking out in the song and dance. They're like, whoop, whoop. It's a pretty awesome job. My only regret is not starting it like a decade earlier when we talked about it right at the beginning. I just get giddy, like getting a look at houses and how fascinating they are. And each one is different from the next. And it's just, figuring out the story this house is going to tell.
I love that. Every house has a story to tell.
Yeah.
It's true. It's our job to figure out exactly that and convey it, It's cool.
Milind, did you have an incident with a squirrel during an inspection with Reuben one time?
Yes.
He told me to stop telling that story too.
Oh no, I'm so sorry I brought that up. We can skip that. I just have heard that story. When I was learning how to teach these classes, it might have come up a few times, although no names were mentioned.
People have asked me about this incident, Reuben. Thank you. So it's another 1.5 story home, St. Louis Park. I remember it well. For some reason, I remember the brown shingles, and we're up there. It's fairly steep. I'm still getting my roofing legs underneath me, and Reuben prances right up to the chimney, takes the cap off, and this squirrel comes bounding out of the open chimney now and takes a leap off of my head, and I thought I was going to die. And Reuben cracking up.
I thought I was going to die laughing.
It was one of those, laughing so loud he wasn't making any sound. It was like his face was moving but no sound was coming out.
Yes.
You told everybody about it. So.
Yeah, I told everybody. I've told it a few hundred times. To be fair, it's not like I've told everybody. It's just a few thousand people.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Did it scratch your head, Milind, with its toenails?
No, I don't think so. It had a soft takeoff.
Oh,
I don't know why you wouldn't tell more people that story, Milind. I don't know. I think it's an awesome story.
it's
I have
great.
no shame, so it's cool. But no, there's definitely yeah, a lot of stuff. I have a weird memory with houses. So I'm just picturing that it's a south face. Like you can picture this. I don't know. It's just a strange, the specific memory with homes. But yeah, now you bring up this squirrel roof thing. It was like I can remember everything about it. I don't know.
PTSD, Milind.
That's right. That's right. You know, you talk about PTSD, Tessa. All right, we're getting long on time, but Milind, what about the house from hell that you and my dad inspected?
The house from hell. This was definitely by far the most things that had ever gone wrong at an inspection. There was so much stuff wrong. He actually wrote an article on it and got published in the ASHI Reporter. So I mean, there was a lot going on. But what was he doing? He's inspecting the outside. He puts his hand down. He puts his hand down in dog crap, and he goes into the attic and he loses his flashlight. And there's a ton of insulation up there. And if you drop your flashlight into a bunch of loose fill fiberglass, it's gone. It's not
It's
like
gone.
it's this subtle glow that you're seeing below the insulation. It's dark. So I didn't know this. I was on the outside somewhere. I'm like, oh, where'd Neil go? And then sure enough, he's just like floundering around in the attic of this like 5,000 square foot house in pitch black. But
Oh no.
somehow he found it. But the sellers were there for some reason. Picking up a radon test. I was doing the radon test on the house. The sellers were there. They had this little dog that was just off. The dog bit me and bit me again. Oh, the furnace. How did I forget the furnace? I was testing the furnace for Neil, and I'm trying to get a good look at the heat exchanger and where the flames go into the furnace. And I'm trying to get close to this one burner chamber where the igniter is, and my mirror nicked the igniter and cracked it. So I got to fix it. So I go this is in Chanhassen, and I go, the closest place to buy this replacement igniter was a Day Appliance in White Bear Lake. So
Oh no.
they were the only people that had it in stock. So I go to White Bear Lake, 45 minutes, almost a solid hour drive there. I get there, I'm like, can I buy 2 of these and return one if it doesn't work? And again, new inspector, not a lot of cash on hand. They're like, no returns. Oh, I can't screw this up. I'll just buy the one. So I pick up one, I drive back, I'm putting it in, and it cracks. It just shatters into 3 pieces. So drive back, get another one, put it in. It goes fine after that. But yeah, there was many things. I think I'm leaving some stuff out. But yeah, it was a mess of an inspection.
I think I would have been done at that point. I would have been just like in the fetal position.
Yes.
It was a long day. Those don't happen very often. And, I tell everybody that is working with us nowadays, I don't ever want you to screw up, but know that there is a standing challenge to screw up in a way that I have screwed up.
Yeah, and same with me. I mean, whatever mistake, gosh, I've made it. Milind, we're talking about screw ups that you've made, but I got to talk about the time that you like saved the day on one of mine. Well, actually, there was a lot of them, I'm sure.
Melinda saved the day for me multiple times too.
You know what? I think everybody on our team can probably list a dozen times that Milind has saved the day for them. I mean, Milind is like, when you think about the inspectors on our team, Milind is like Superman. He's like the guy in the cape who flies in to save the day for all of us. I mean, that's what he does now. It's like he can fix everything. But one of the first ones he ever did, where I was just, I was so thankful. I was doing a house in Minneapolis, and I used to operate the valves on radiators with impunity. Like, all right, radiator's not heating up, no worries. I'll just open the valve and we'll make sure it's working. I'm not going to call in somebody else to make sure it works. It's like, I'm going to save my clients money. I'll just open it. And it worked fine. I mean, for a long time, I would do that on every home inspection until it didn't work fine. And that was where I had operated the valve and it started leaking and it would not stop. And I'm like, no big deal. I just tightened on the packing nut. That's always worked in the past. Well, it didn't work this time. And it leaked and I ran out and I got my towel and it soaked through my towel and I got another one and nothing I could do would stop it. And the owner was home. And I'm like, dude, you got this leak and you got a leak in radiator. He's like, well, you better fix it. And he went downstairs and he's just like, all right, whatever. Don't bother me with any of this. And I'm just like, shoot, I really got to do something here. And I ended up calling Milind, and he ran to the store and he got everything they had in the repair department. He got like this magic putty, and Flex Seal didn't exist at the time, or he would have bought that. But I remember he bought this tape, like this magic tape. It's all as seen on TV stuff. And I ended up using the entire roll of this silicone tape and wrapped it around that thing a bazillion times. I got it to stop leaking. But I mean, Milind was on the other side of town when this was going on, and he had to run to the store. So it's like I sat there with this thing leaking and mopping up water for a good hour and a half. But Milind showed up with the stuff to fix it, and it worked. And I will never forget that. And it's like, I don't know what I would have done if Milind hadn't saved my butt. This is 10 years ago now or whatever.
No problem at all. You've done the same for me, and I will happily do it over and over again for everybody else. There was that internal post, I think, Tessa, you shared with everybody about how something went wrong. And then dozens of people just started chiming in with, oh, John did this for me. Somebody locked their phone inside the house, and so they had to go to a gas station, get a phone call John up, and he unlocks the door. I mean, it's just something we do. It's one of the, we have a service mindset, and it's one of the huge benefits of working for a team.
Milind, you saved my butt. Do you remember that furnace where the one of the fuses blew in the blower compartment?
Yeah.
Yeah, on the switchboard. Yeah, I was doing an inspection. It was with Scott, actually. And after we tested the furnace, like what happened? I think we had opened up the blower compartment, and that's what blew the fuse.
One of those weird electronic or like statically charged filters, and the wire was wonky, where in order to put the cover back on, you had to squeeze the wire.
Yeah.
So there's just, it wasn't you, it would have been the next person.
Well, and we called Milind, and Milind went to the hardware store, or you went to an auto body shop, bought a bunch of fuses, and came out to that furnace and replaced it, fixed it, and
fun time.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Sounds like the job goes smooth every day. There's never any hiccups to be had.
Oh yeah, exactly. We try. There's never the goal is always to never do any harm and get as much information as possible, but things aren't perfect, and we're human, and we just want to do the best we can with the time we're given to give people good information about the house, and things happen sometimes.
Yep. Well, I think we're going to have to wrap it up. I mean, we could go on for hours and hours talking about the little foolhardy mistakes that we've all run into over the years, but it was fun, Milind. Thanks for doing this.
Well, thank you for having me.
We probably need a part 2 and part 3. And
yeah, we do. We got to hear about your wedding story too, Bill. I haven't forgotten. I want to hear it.
Really? Okay. Do we have time?
We got time for anything we want. Go for it.
My wedding story was the best of all time. I got married on a boat on Love Lake. So
the true romantic that you are.
Yes. Listen, I punch all the romantic buttons all the time. Okay. My wife will confirm all of this. But no,
this is a work podcast.
That's not what I mean. I mean, when it comes to saying the right things and doing the right things, jeez, get your mind out of the gutter. Anyway, so this wedding I'm referring to was the second time around for both myself and my wife. And we just decided like 2 weeks before that, well, let's just do this. And we founded Justice of the Peace, and we had 4 friends on the boat and the photographer, and we launched out of Ernie's on Gull Lake, drove up into Love Lake, got down, did the whole thing. It was 15, 20 minutes, and we were off to cruising. So it was like the best wedding of all time. We spent the rest of the day on the lake, going to all the various establishments on Gull Lake, there are many, and drove back from Bar Harbor to Craigan's at 1:30 at night. And for anybody who knows that lake, that's about a 13, 14-mile drive, about that. And the northern lights were going, and the water was flat as glass, and we just cruised across the lake. It was amazing. So
that's a good story, Bill.
Yeah, I loved it.
Hey, was Jody as big a fisherman before you got married, or is that something that developed?
It was a simultaneous thing. I wasn't very into fishing either, and she kind of talked about it a little bit, and I said, well, I can I can show you a little thing or two about fishing. And the next thing you know, we're off and running. So at first it was mostly ice heavy, but now we're more open water folks too.
Do you have to say fisher woman or fisher person? Does fisherman still work?
Well, just rock star fisher person, whatever you want to say. She
Okay.
kills me all the time. She catches more fish than I do. So however you want to identify her.
I'm just curious. I'm honestly asking it because I'm always catching myself using a non-PC word. And as soon as Milind said fisherman, I'm like, wait, hold on. Can we say fisherman anymore?
We can do whatever we want. It's our podcast.
All right, good.
Okay.
Good. All right.
I'm not
Excellent.
offended by it.
Awesome. And so we're going to close on that note. Tessa's not offended. Thank you very much. You've all been listening to Structure Talk, a Structure Tech presentation, and we will catch you next time. Have a great week.
For more information on how we can provide you with the right information about your home before you buy or sell, contact us at structuretech.com.